December 1944. Deep in the frozen Ardennes region of Belgium, thousands of American soldiers are besieged, encircled, and low on ammunition. German tanks are closing in on them through the snow. Artillery fire rains down on the town relentlessly. No retreat, no surrender. The battle just about to be waged in Bastogne will break Adolf Hitler's last offensive. The Battle of Bastogne started with surprises. Hitler had launched Operation Wacht am Rhein, a massive armor assault through the Ardennes forest that would split the Allied front and take Antwerp. As German forces attacked on December 16, 1944, with cloud cover, they crashed into thinly held American positions and rolled west with incredible speed. At the core of the German offensive was the Belgian town of Bastogne, which was vital because it contained 7 key road junctures. This town stood as the gatekeeper to the southern Ardennes, and as the American lines fell around the town, U.S. commanders moved reinforcements into Bastogne. On December 18, 1944, trucks arriving with the 101st Airborne Division and parts of the 10th Armored Division sped through the roads choked by snow into Bastogne. The paratroopers were under-equipped for winter warfare.
The line is collapsing here. We have hours at best.
With some men without heavy overcoats, in dire need of artillery, and in short supply of ammunition, the paratroopers were not parachuted into battle, but pitched into an emerging siege. On the 19th of December, German armored spearheads, advancing with the XLV Panther Corps, went around the outskirts of Bastogne. The American forces were withdrawn village by village. Communication lines were severed. Snowstorms reduced visibility, and temperatures fell well below freezing. On the 20th of December 1944, the trap finally snapped shut as Bastogne was encircled completely. Now, almost 18,000 American soldiers found themselves alone, opposed to several German divisions, all of which were accompanied by tanks and heavy artillery. What had started as a German breakthrough soon turned into a siege. The battle for Bastogne was no longer a battle of maneuver, but of endurance, and the worst was yet to come. By December 21, 1944, Bastogne was completely cut off from the outside world. The Germans closed in on Bastogne, sealing all the roads around the town with infantry, tanks, and artillery. During this time, snowstorms further blanketed the combat area, with visibility reduced to only a few meters and guns frozen solid. The troops within the encirclement area continued digging, knowing they would not be rescued soon as elements of the 101st Airborne Division and the armored units awaited their salvation. German big guns opened up with a barrage. Artillery shells pounded Bastogne day and night, blowing buildings to pieces and starting fires that crackled feebly in the snow. Civilian dwellings, cellars, and churches were crowded with hospital patients. The wounded were carried into cellars where doctors operated without anesthetics, their numb fingers from cold. Morphine was running low, bandages even scarcer. Dead men were piled outside in the snow where they had fallen. The German infantry was probing the American lines constantly. The German offensive was most heavily felt in attacking the American positions near Marvy, Neff, and in the southern approaches to town. The German forces, backed by tanks, crossed into the open field, only to be mowed down by American machine gun and artillery fire at point-blank range. The American bazookas waited until the last moment to launch their attack, destroying the tanks at close range. The men were given food, 1 cold meal per day. Ammunition came down in counts per round fired. The radios carried snatches of information as the commanders fought to hold their shrinking perimeter. Yet the men had courage. The officers went from foxhole to foxhole, reassuring the nervously frightened soldiers that Bastogne was not to fall. As night fell on December 22, 1944, the siege had begun in full. The snow-covered fields shimmered under flares and fire. Bastogne had become a fortress of ice and fire, isolated, battered, yet standing tall under the relentless push of the Germans that was soon to come. The morning of December 22, 1944, dawned cold and silent over the battle-scarred terrain of Bastogne. Snowflakes fell gently on the battlefield, and for the brief period, there was complete silence as the German artillery paused from firing on the Americans.
The orders have changed. We move
Shortly after dawn, German officers emerged towards the American front near Neffe, flying a white flag and bearing a written ultimatum from General Heinrich Freiherr von Luttwitz, who was the Ixlam Panzer Corps commander. The message was clear. The American forces surrounded were ordered to surrender at once. If they did not, German artillery and armor would reduce Bastogne to a heap of destruction. The ultimatum was total annihilation. In a small underground bunker beneath the Bastogne barracks, Brigadier General Anthony C. McAuliffe, acting division commander, read the translated
primary
letter
objective
aloud.
is here.
The officers
We
were
move at
gathered
dawn.
around him, visibly tired and unshaven, with boots smeared with frozen mud. For a brief time, no one said anything. McAuliffe then answered in one word, which was spoken with frustration and disbelief: nuts. The reply was typed and returned to the German delegation. The officers were confused and asked for explanation. It meant that the Americans wouldn't give up, explained Colonel Harry W. O. Kinnard. There was no question of negotiations. It was as simple as that. The Germans left, shocked by the refusal to talk. The impact was felt instantly at Bastogne. Word spread along the frozen trenches, carried by men moving from one foxhole to the next. Laughter pierced the weariness, and morale soared. The word became a battle cry, a statement that the siege was to be endured, not escaped. However, the German commanders retaliated furiously. Artillery fire was resumed, raining down rounds on the town throughout the afternoon. Infantry charges followed, accompanied by tanks thrust against weak points around Marvy and Foy. The battle was escalated instantly. Bastogne had complied with Germany's ultimatum. This siege of the town had become very personal. However, by the 23rd of December 1944, Bastogne was on the verge of collapse. Ammunition was in short supply. Artillery units were rationing out ammunition only to the most critical targets. Infantrymen were seizing weapons from the bodies of the dead. The wounded overflowed the basements that had been converted into makeshift hospitals, with many not receiving treatment for days. It was also very cold, with temperatures as low as -20 degrees Celsius, -4 degrees Fahrenheit, which froze blood in the snow. The German attack grew in ferocity. The Panzer Lehr Division and the 26th Volksgrenadier Division attacked the American perimeter continuously, and again, Foy, Marvy, and the eastern routes were the points of attack. The tanks came forward through the fog and smoke, shooting straight into American positions. The defense shot back from point-blank ranges. The bazooka crews killed tanks from within 30 meters or so, dying instantly from machine gun fire. On December 23rd, the weather suddenly broke. For the first time since the siege started, the sky opened up. American soldiers looked up as the sound of engines rumbled overhead. C-47 transport planes of the U.S. 9th Air Force broke through the overcast, accompanied by fighters. Parachutes sprouted white, red, and green against the blue. Ammunition, food, medical supplies, and blankets rained down across the perimeter. Some drops fell in German lines, but enough came to hand for American purposes to alter everything. Morale catapulted immediately. Men were cheering out loud as they hauled bundles of supplies through the snow and shell fire. The artillery batteries resumed sustained fire. Medics finally had plasma and morphine. Bastogne was still surrounded, still under attack, but it was no longer starving. German commanders recognized the shift immediately. Their window was closing. Attacks on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, December 24-25, 1944, were desperate and costly, failing to break the reinforced defenses. Bastogne held, and in the distance, engines could now be heard. American armor was coming, ammunition was lacking, medical supplies were depleted, and the wounded were cold and frozen in cellars without medical treatment. Yet the American perimeter remained intact around Bastogne until 26th of December 1944. Columns of armor, spearheaded by General George S. Patton's Third Army, broke through the German lines at 4 hours and 50 minutes, proceeding from the south of Bastogne. The leading unit, Company C, 37th Tank Battalion, 4th Armored Division, commanded by Captain William Dwight, entered the village of Assenois, only 4 kilometers from the town. Shortly thereafter, American tanks broke through the German roadblocks and entered Bastogne. The siege had been lifted. Paratroopers of the 101st Airborne Division emerged from foxholes and ruined buildings as Sherman tanks arrived under falling snow. Some wept. Others gazed impassively, too exhausted to feel anything. Bastogne, besieged for 6 days, was no longer alone. Yet, the fight was not over. German forces mounted a number of counterattacks between 27th December 1944 and 3rd January 1945, aiming to encircle the pocket again. The fighting was intense and hand-to-hand, an infantry battle in the forest, tanks on the ice roads, and artillery pounding villages such as Foy, Noville, and Marvy. On 13th of January 1945, American forces launched a final attack on Foy to destroy the last of the German positions north of Bastogne. The attack was disorganized at first, but under the direction of officers such as Lieutenant Colonel Robert G. Cole, the American forces were soon moving forward out of Foy following savage fighting house to house. The price was tremendous. Casualties within the 101st Airborne Division during the siege totaled over 2,000 killed, wounded, or missing. Furthermore, German casualties totaled over 5,000, including their much-needed armor, which was desperately needed elsewhere on the shrinking front. Strategically, Bastogne was the turning point in the Battle of the Bulge. As the Americans held firm at a road intersection, they stalled Hitler's planned invasion and kept the German armor away from the Meuse River. This delay also allowed the Allies to pour more forces into the Ardennes, which sealed the fate of the invasion. In January 1945, the Germans retreated, the Western Front stabilized, and in 4 months, Allied armies would cross into Germany. Bastogne became legend. The defense became part of military history as a testament to survival, leadership, and fighting to the end. General McAuliffe's answer, spoken with one word, nuts, symbolized the determination and defiance of Allied resistance in Europe. Today, snow-covered forests in the Ardennes region remain silent. But beneath them lie the scars of one of the most desperate battles of World War II, where exhausted soldiers made a stand against tremendous odds and history turned on a crossroads in Belgium.